So we all know the story of Andre the Giant. If you've followed wrestling for a long time, or as long as I have, you know that Andre was one of the biggest heroes in the wrestling world until he turned on Hogan at WrestleMania 3, well, shortly before. And I was watching the HBO documentary on Andre the Giant, and one of the things that really stuck with me was Vince McMahon admitting that his relationship with Andre the Giant was strained toward the end of Andre's run because he felt like Vince didn't appreciate what he did. If I'm paraphrasing, hopefully it's accurate. Basically, Andre felt that he'd thrown away all of his goodwill with the fans and turned bad, and now everyone hated him. And that's fine if you're not a giant. And you can hide, if you can duck into a bar and not be noticed, or slide into a restaurant booth or a club at 2 in the morning and not be noticed. But it was impossible for people not to spot Andre. He was the most hated man in wrestling for that stretch, especially when he had been such a beloved figure, and really threw away all that goodwill for the fans to help Vince build his business and build Hulk Hogan. And according to, well, at least from what I picked up, Andre felt like Vince kind of talked him into it, took advantage of him. Andre was retired and injured with his back injury, and Vince called him back to do business. And it got me thinking, what would a hero's send-off really have hurt for Andre the Giant? I mean, for, again, one of the most beloved characters in all of wrestling, who really did everything he could to make Hulk Hogan the next guy. So this is going to be a special edition of the Wrestling Multiverse. Mr. Sheldon Positive is injured and is convalescing at home. Want everyone to wish him a speedy recovery. Keep him in your thoughts. He should be back next week, but we'll see. But this week, it's been something I've been thinking about since I watched the documentary a few months ago. So off and on, I've kind of thought of a few things, and I think if you look at what was going on at the time, yeah, there are some gaps, there are some things that would have to be shuffled around, but I don't think it really would have been that much of a stretch, and it would have lent some star power on the babyface side of things in 1988, 89. So first, let's go through a quick review of Andre's timeline here. Andre challenges Hogan at WrestleMania 3 after turning heel and joining Bobby Heenan Saturday night's main event shortly before this. Sellout record crowd at Pontiac Silverdome, just up the road from me and even closer to Mr. Positive. Andre is unsuccessful. They build to Survivor Series with Andre captaining a team versus Hogan. Andre is successful and the sole survivor of his team. That parlays with them trying to spin they try to make it look like Andre was unpinned, or that he had Hogan pinned before early on in the match, which we know was not exactly true, but they use this to build momentum into a rematch for the title. That happened at the main event in February of 1988. The contract signing took place at the Rumble Royale on the USA Network in February of that year. Just before, I believe it was February or January, I'm sorry. But obviously we know what happened at the main event. There was the twin referees with the supposed payoffs and plastic surgery, which led to Andre winning the championship under dubious scenario, handing it to DiBiase seconds later. Jack Tunney then stripped DiBiase of the title, says you can't give it away, and set up the title tournament at WrestleMania 4 in Atlantic City. Andre double DQs with Hogan, keeps him out of the tournament. We go to a final of DiBiase and Savage. All four get involved. Savage wins the title and carries it through till next year. Andre challenges Savage during the Saturday night's main event during the summer of '88 and sets up a SummerSlam confrontation for the first SummerSlam in '88, the Mega Bucks versus the Mega Powers. Andre the Giant and the $1 Million Man with Virgil in their corner versus the Macho Man Randy Savage, ooh yeah, and Hulk Hogan with Miss Elizabeth in their corner, Jesse Ventura as the special guest referee. Savage and Hogan win with the assist from Liz, carrying on to Survivor Series of that year. Andre with the Heenan family and Dino Bravo are victorious over Jake Roberts, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, Scott Casey, Tito Santana, and one other wrestler I can't think of right now. So Andre's a back-to-back survivor at Survivor Series. Takes us to 1989 Royal Rumble. He starts feuding with Jake the Snake Roberts, which carries them into a match at WrestleMania in 1989 with John Studd as the guest referee. John Studd had won the Rumble, had returned. He leaves shortly after WrestleMania 5 over a pay dispute, never really having a rematch with Andre. Andre goes into a six-man tag with the Twin Towers, which might be the biggest six-man tag that I can think of, versus Demolition and Jim Duggan. Then takes us into Survivor Series. Reportedly, at this time, Andre was not capable of a one-on-one matchup, so the matches with the Warrior were kept very short. And he captained the Heenan family versus the Ultimate Warriors team in a losing effort. Then he went to the Royal Rumble in 1990 with his farewell matchup, teaming with Haku to lose the Tag Team Championships to Demolition at WrestleMania 6. That was Andre's final match in the WWF in the States. So I know I went through that kind of quickly, but the main crux of it was he feuded with Hogan, which then bled into a feud with Savage and an alliance with DiBiase. And then after that was over with, he went back to the Heenan family and was, doing his own thing with them. We see him bouncing off of Jim Duggan, Jake Roberts. There's Hogan, there's Savage, there's DiBiase. And if we just take that and look at where things were and where momentum was, you could leave almost everything as it is and just make subtle differences, I think anyway, and change things drastically. And this is what I mean. WrestleMania 3, leave it the same. Survivor Series 87, again, leave it the same. Let him captain a team. Sole survivor. Rematch at the main event, leave that the same too. Although I would leave that the same, you could make even a subtle distinction to kind of sow the seeds of dissent between him and DiBiase. Andre has the title and have DiBiase yank it right out of his hands. Because it makes sense in this sense where Andre threw everything away for simple reasons, human reasons. One, jealousy because Hogan was the champion, the fans loved him. Andre was yesterday's hero. His career was winding down, so he threw that away. He joined the devil himself, Bobby Heenan, to face Hogan because he'd never had the championship, and his friend Hogan had never even offered him a shot. So that's how it happened. So I thought it was interesting that after all of that, Andre turning completely evil, that he would just hand over the championship to DiBiase, no harm, no foul, and have no issue with it, and just say, oh, he's paying me well, that's fine, he's taking care of me. The whole Andre turn was based on pride. So it makes perfect sense where you could sow some small seeds of dissension, and it could just be a look, something subtle, because you don't want the story to turn into, when is Andre going to turn on DiBiase? Obviously, you want it to be, this is an unbeatable team. You have the richest wrestler in history, and a guy who's technically sound, and should be, on his own merits, a contender, teaming up with the unstoppable force in wrestling, who may have a legitimate claim to the throne. So yeah, I would keep that all the same. It may be a subtle glance. When DiBiase yanks it out of his hands, just maybe Andre give him a look like, hey, motherfucker. Don't forget who's doing all the heavy lifting over here. At least let me hold the damn thing. And you could use that for later. But again, I would just leave it the same. Go to... you could even have him challenge Savage in the summertime like you did. Go to SummerSlam, do the Mega Bucks, Mega Powers match. Again, go off without a hitch. Same way as it was. You've already sown the seeds of dissension. And now they have their shot to beat and embarrass the Mega Powers. And they don't get to do that. So the Mega Powers win. And again, nothing much has to change here. And then you start the build for Survivor Series. And the build for Survivor Series, you could have, DiBiase standing there, and he's talking about, I'm going to captain a team to end Hulkamania, blah, blah, blah. Because at Survivor Series 88, that's what you had. It was the $1 Million team of $1 Million Man, the Twin Towers, the Red Rooster. I'm trying to think of the last one. It wasn't Bad News. Wasn't Hercules. Haku. Oh, yeah. So DiBiase, Haku, the Twin Towers, and the Red Rooster. Versus Hogan, Savage, Coco, Hercules, and Hillbilly Jim, I believe it was. So you could have the build with DiBiase saying, hey, can you imagine me and Andre teaming up with the Twin Towers versus, and maybe the Red Rooster. Or no, me, Haku. Actually, this makes better sense from an entertaining perspective anyway. Andre the Giant and DiBiase co-captaining with the Twin Towers and Haku versus Hogan, Savage, and the like. And you could have DiBiase or have Andre just be like, no. DiBiase thinks that I'm just going to continue to do his bidding. You need to understand, I am Andre the Giant, blah, blah, blah. Remember who I am. And again, we sowed those seeds of, don't take me for granted. And start to show, not come out and say it, but start to show a little bit that Andre is growing frustrated. In early 87, he made his claim for the title. He disappeared between WrestleMania and Survivor Series, where he captained a team and was the sole survivor against Hogan's team. That threw him back into title contention, which then he handed it over to DiBiase. So now we're a year and a half later, he still doesn't have the title. He and DiBiase couldn't get the job done at SummerSlam. And according to Andre, I would have, maybe this chapter's over. Maybe he wants to get back in contention, or, again, it was a pride thing. I think the whole angle, Andre's whole story arc, is centered on that pride. And in this case, screw you, DiBiase. You paid me a lot of money, but you can't expect me just to hang around and be your lackey. I was the biggest star in this business. I'm not just going to hang around and be your cleanup guy when I teed up the ball for you and you couldn't even knock it off. So I lobbed a softball to you and you couldn't hit a home run. So he's not turning babyface, but he pretty much says, no, I'm going to do my own thing. Which then leaves leaves Heenan in the lurch, because he's got Haku already committed. So maybe he offers up another Heenan family member, but on short notice, all he can All he can muster is the Red Rooster. Oh, which would make even much more sense there. Here's the rookie, the Red Rooster, as opposed to Andre the Giant, which could be another tension point between, DiBiase and Heenan, which, Heenan's still working with him. They're heels. He's paying Heenan well. Heenan will accept the money, but Andre's off doing his own thing. And then Survivor Series, I would have everything happen almost as it happens, except, maybe there's a small scuffle between Andre and the Heenan family. It doesn't have to be a full-blown issue, doesn't have to be a blow-up and something big, but maybe Andre feels slighted, or the guys aren't listening. It could be anything, and I'm at a loss for what would be the catalyst here. But something even as simple as a miscue in the matchup, and maybe you've got, Andre and Heenan arguing, and Heenan trying to exert, hey, I'm the boss. Andre's like, I hired you. I'm paying you, or whatever the arrangement is. It could be something simple like that. Like, you may be the Bobby Knight of wrestling, but don't forget, I'm Andre the effing Giant. And, maybe one of the teammates gets in Andre's face, and he chops him or headbutts him, which leads to a quick fall. And then Andre comes back and is a part of the winning team with the rest of them. And then maybe Andre walks off, or there's an issue, or doesn't celebrate with the rest of the team. So Andre would be back-to-back. Andre would be the first man to captain back-to-back teams to survival in the Survivor Series. So what we're doing is, while we're kind of breaking Andre away and letting him stand on his own again, we're also kind of repositioning him or regalvanizing him after he's taken some losses and taken the back seat to other people. He had a DQ finish with Savage. DiBiase took the fall in the tag team matchup. He didn't beat Hogan at WrestleMania. The only real win he's had in the past, year and a half, other than maybe some squash match on TV somewhere in there, was the Survivor Series match in 87 and then the Survivor Series match in 88. And again, he would be let him be the first, even if he's a sole survivor. I'm not saying, have Dino Bravo, Rick Rude, and the rest of those guys take the fall, but maybe he's the first back-to-back sole survivor. Who knows? But between Survivor Series 88 and WrestleMania 9, I would have him go away. I think he did it anyway. And I would have Bobby Heenan on TV. And whenever they're asked about the falling out, Heenan just kind of dismisses it. Hey, we're fine. He's home in France. He's resting. We've got Andre has such a great contract. He does what he wants when he wants, and he's highly paid to do it. He doesn't have to come back until he's ready and good and ready to come back. It's been a long year and a half. The big man wants some rest and relaxation, and we're going to give it to him. And then right before the Royal Rumble, I would have Heenan declare that either Andre is going to come back or the Heenan family is strong. Because here's the Royal Rumble. It's this big event. How are we going to do this? How are we going to make it seem special? Have Andre's the king of the Battle Royals, right? The announcers are going to be asking Heenan, hey, we haven't heard from Andre yet. Here's the king of the Battle Royals. He's under contract with you as his representation. You haven't represented him at all. All you've said is things are good, he'll come back. He'll be back when he's ready. What a great opportunity this would be for one of your clients and for you financially as well. If you could, this is a layup. Take the king of the Battle Royal, the giant, the unmovable object, and insert him into the first Royal Rumble. It's a layup. It's a guaranteed payday. And Heenan's dodging it, and then maybe Andre shows up via satellite or in studio, whatever the case. And this is where I would have Andre kind of plead his case in a way. It's not like he's sucking up to the fans, but I'd have Andre come out and just, basically, I don't know, fire Heenan or not fire Heenan, and just say, hey, look, it's been 2 years. Our contract is up. I'm not renewing. Good luck. I need to do this on my own. And then have him say, the reason that I challenged Hogan, as I just said before, was because my pride was hurt. I'm a giant, but I'm a human. I was jealous. My pride was hurt. I felt abandoned by the fans because here's my friend coming up and being the most successful wrestler of all time, taking my place on top of the wrestling world, and I was happy for him. But I saw the writing on the wall. I was yesterday's news. And here's my friend who is now in the top spot, and I'm happy for him until, here we go, 3 years. He says his best friend's Andre the Giant. And again, I'm long-winded. He wouldn't say it like this, but my friend never gave me a shot, never asked me about it, we never discussed it. Kind of kept me at arm's length when it came to that. And everything, the jealousy, watching him take my spot, not getting any more title opportunities, feeling like the fans, turned their backs on me in a way or forgot about me when I tried to be so good to them. And then I saw, I get this dinky trophy for being undefeated for 15 years, and Hogan gets this giant trophy for this 3-year title reign. It hurt. And I think people can understand that. And it'd be a great story to tell. No matter how big, no matter how unstoppable you seem, no matter how tough, everyone's vulnerable. And to some extent, we're all vulnerable to the same thing. So I think it's a very human thing. It's a very universal thing that Andre could say. And I think he could win some sympathy. And I'm not saying he's going to gun for the title or he should get a title run, but it's a perfect way to re-solidify him as a babyface. And now you can take him and put him in the Royal Rumble. Because let's face it, John Studd won anyway, and they really didn't do a whole lot with Studd after that. So if Studd's coming in 89, you can always, delay it, push it back, whatever. But I did take Andre as a babyface into the Royal Rumble. Kind of this is his redemption. Even if he never wrestles another match, here he is pretty much explaining to the fans why he did what he did. Maybe he doesn't quite say I'm sorry, but he is kind of apologizing and explaining his actions, and he's setting out to redeem himself. So now this is really the solidification of Andre as, a fan favorite once again. And the interesting part of that story, too, is the Royal Rumble in 89, they showed DiBiase paying people off. Buying numbers, buying support, trying to get people to eliminate Hogan. And then once Hogan was gone, he was there at the end, but he was faced with John Studd. You could replace Andre in Studd's position, and it would be even more interesting here because Andre not only has turned away from DiBiase, so he's going to be a target for DiBiase. He's turned away from the Heenan family, so now he's got some of the biggest and the baddest gunning for him out of revenge. But he's also the king of the Battle Royal. And he's a man on a mission, so he's fighting 3 fronts here. And I think that'd be a really interesting story to tell. And I wouldn't put him out there early on because obviously he couldn't do that. But give him a second half spot and have him come out, and that's maybe you tell one story through the beginning of the Rumble. And one of the main stories you tell through the end of the Rumble is Andre and his redemption. And here, the Twin Towers are gunning for him, and DiBiase comes after him, and the Warlord and Barbarian, and And all of these people have been paid off by DiBiase, or they are targeting him because he needs to be eliminated. But I would do the back-to-back thing almost, or not even the back-to-back, but I would have them also have a moment to plant a seed for later on, where Hogan's in trouble, Andre comes up, and it looks like he's going to eliminate Hogan, but instead he throws him aside and knocks out or either knocks out or knocks out of the ring whoever was, jumping Hogan. Maybe it's the Twin Towers, I don't know. And you can even have the Twin Towers eliminate Hogan, and then Andre comes in and eliminates those guys. But again, you're getting Andre over, you're re-solidifying him, and you have a moment where where he and Hogan cross paths, and he almost, as a show of good faith, doesn't eliminate Hogan when he could, and kind of gives him a stay of execution, even if it is for a few minutes. So that there's a seed planted there, but also it's just these little notches, these little things to galvanize Andre as a hero once again. So, and I would have Andre take it. I would have, instead of a blow-off one-on-one match with Andre and DiBiase, because at this point I don't think Andre was capable of very much. I know they did the WrestleMania 5 match with Jake the Snake, but it wasn't that good. And instead of killing DiBiase, because he still was a top heel and had a lot of heat, instead of completely blowing that off, do something like DiBiase and Stud did. Have it come down to DiBiase and Andre. Andre is going to play with DiBiase like a cat and a mouse, and then throw him out to win the Rumble. So not only was Andre back-to-back successful team captain at the Survivor Series, but now he's a babyface. He's one of the top guys in the game still, and he's the first ever Royal Rumble winner. And again, and it's not even changing all that much. Sometimes when we talk about fantasy booking, people go, "Oh yeah, you imagine shifting all that around." It's really not changing all that much. Maybe you delay John Studd and come in later, which will come into play in a minute. But that takes us to WrestleMania 5. Andre's a babyface. He's just embarrassed DiBiase. I would have maybe Jim Duggan come out and congratulate Andre, because Duggan won the Battle Royal the year before on USA. This is officially the Royal Rumble that Andre's the first winner of. And have him, maybe congratulate him, or some sort of issue where DiBiase confronts Andre and says, I was hiring you to be my muscle and you turned your back on me. I've hired one of the most dangerous men on the planet to watch my back, and you better watch yours. And then Bad News Brown comes out. Maybe Bad News goes after Andre's legs because he was a shooter. Maybe he tries to hit him with a chair. And then maybe because they had that connection with the Royal Rumble, Jim Duggan comes out and saves Andre or backs him up. Which, again, it's not changing much. You go to WrestleMania 5, Duggan faced Bad News in a short and uneventful match. Mostly a brawl. But there you go. Now you've got, DiBiase as a temporary backup, who's a tough individual, a legit individual. And you could always do the finish of the match where Bad News walks out on DiBiase because, you can pay me to watch your back, but you don't tell me what to do. You don't boss me around. And again, I think Andre and Duggan versus DiBiase and Bad News wouldn't be a bad match to see on WrestleMania 5, given what we'd already seen instead. After WrestleMania, I remember Andre was in that 6-man tag with the one-man gang and whatnot. And I know the Mega Powers exploded at WrestleMania 5. Zeus and Savage faced Hogan and the Barber. I don't know if Andre would have played well with Zeus, but what a marquee matchup. Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant. Remember, we planted the seeds at the Royal Rumble. Hulk Hogan and Andre teaming up for the first time since 1985 or 86, whatever it was. two best friends reconciling. Maybe it's going to be Zeus and Beefcake, and Zeus like destroys Beefcake somehow, or takes him out, or something to that extent. So Beefcake could still be in their corner, or they could get heat through Beefcake, and he's still kind of. And that way too, you could dovetail it where maybe Andre isn't involved in the no holds barred matches later on, with like the steel cage and all that, and Beefcake steps in. But at the same time, look at that marquee: Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant versus Zeus and the Macho Man Randy Savage. I don't think he was the king at that point yet. And plus, it makes sense. They all have history together. They've had the tag matches against one another, teaming up with each other. So I think that match would be a little bit better than Beefcake and Hogan. Then that would take us to the Survivor Series. Now, this was almost the end of the line for Andre. He was eliminated pretty quickly by the Warrior. But I think you could substitute, and you've done this feud with DiBiase through the summer. I'm sorry, you could do the feud. I'm sorry, you could carry it from Royal Rumble through WrestleMania and maybe some matches during the summer, leading to the Survivor Series matchup where Andre reunites with Hogan after that's kind of blown off with DiBiase, but you still don't have it settled with Heenan yet. So you could leave that as a point of suspense. Like, when's Heenan going to get his revenge? And that would come and boil over after SummerSlam, somewhere between there and Survivor Series. And I'd have Andre team up with the Warrior and the Rockers versus Haku, Big John Studd, and the Brainbusters. Now, this is where I said maybe you delay Studd coming in to later in '89, because he wasn't there very long to begin with. So just get some mileage out of him. Maybe, Heenan is embarrassed and he goes back to, maybe, and I don't want to say you come out and say it, but, it's not the same Andre the Giant he was 10 years ago. Let's bring back his arch rival and let's see what happens. Plus, seeing Studd mix it up with Warrior could be interesting. Plus, we know, and again, hindsight's 2020, because of Tully failing the drug test, now you're going to see that first, either you could tease it or you could see the first Heenan-Andre confrontation here at Survivor Series. And again, it's not changing much. You're just switching some of the positions around, delaying a return of Big John Studd. Royal Rumble could have been uneventful for Andre. Maybe he's in the Rumble, and maybe Heenan finally sicks the dogs on him and eliminates him. So where's the send-off? What's the finale? If Andre's not a heel, what's the final match going to be, right? I wouldn't have had the Rumble a send-off, but we're in 1990. He's not capable of a whole lot at this point. And we have to do something. So I think it would be poetic to do maybe a Heenan family versus former Heenan family members. So maybe you take Haku and pair him with Bobby Heenan instead of Andre against Andre the Giant, and a man who faced Haku for the title of King at the Royal Rumble in a pretty decent match. And this would be kind of his swan song too. And just think of this legendary team. And again, that's the thing I'm going for here too, is star power. Harley Race. So just imagine Andre the Giant and Harley Race teaming for the first time since probably the mid-'70s. I don't know, maybe Andre was fighting Harley in the mid-'70s, so they may not have even ever teamed together. Versus Haku and Bobby Heenan. Andre wouldn't have to do much. It wouldn't have to be a very long match. But again, just a fitting end and a more extended... It's not Andre turned babyface at the end of a match, and then he was gone forever. He had that one little moment of redemption, and then he's gone until he comes back and he's barely walking. In this case, this is a 87 he turns heel, and 89 he's a babyface again. So he's the biggest heel in the business for 2 years. Once that's done with, you're not taking him down the card and having him job out to Warrior for the IC title. You're not using him up. You're rehabbing him and using him in marquee and feature positions elsewhere on the card. So, again, I don't think that's very complicated. I don't think it's very convoluted. It's just moving and shifting some things around. And just to recap, I'll just recap this alternate reality run here for just a second. So again, 1987, WrestleMania 3, Hogan beats Andre. That goes off as it was. Survivor Series of that year, after an absence, Andre comes back to be the sole survivor against Hogan's team. 1988, Andre was gone from there until the main event when he challenged Hogan in the rematch for the title. I'd have that go off the same again. The only subtle difference is maybe Andre gives DiBiase a little look when he snatches the title. Like, hey, man, be respectful. Let me hold the bitch if I'm going to do all this work and give it to you. WrestleMania 4, the tournament, that's pretty much the same. Maybe you could have Andre, because of that, making DiBiase sweat it a little bit. Like, oh, we have a plan, or do we? What if it's you and I in the finale? Take us to SummerSlam. Again, same thing, Megabucks versus Megapowers. But after that matchup, Andre's going to go his own way, kind of embarrass DiBiase, because Andre's going to captain a team at Survivor Series instead of joining DiBiase, and who's going to be either the sole survivor or the first captain to man back-to-back teams to victory at Survivor Series. 89 Rumble. The build-up here is where Andre starts to kind of redeem himself, starts to turn babyface. He doesn't continue the contract with Heenan. He wins the first ever Royal Rumble. Building from there to WrestleMania 5, maybe he's attacked by Bad News and DiBiase. Duggan, the winner of the Rumble Royale. Sorry, why is it so hard to say? At the 1988 USA Special, joins him at WrestleMania 5. Duggan and Andre versus DiBiase and Bad News. That takes us to SummerSlam. Hogan and Andre with the reunion versus Savage and Zeus. Andre distances himself from there, has a run-in with the Heenan family, teaming with the Warrior and the Rockers versus Haku, Stud, and the Brainbusters, which ended up being Heenan and Arn Anderson. 90 Rumble, which would be kind of uneventful for Andre, looking to repeat his success the previous year. Maybe he's eliminated by some Heenan family members. Leading to Andre's farewell matchup, WrestleMania 6 in 1990 at the Skydome in Toronto. The former King, Harley Race, with Andre the Giant versus Haku and Bobby the Brain Heenan. Again, I don't think that's so much to ask to give one of the biggest heroes, former heroes of the wrestling industry, a positive send-off instead of the run that he had toward the end, where it was just kind of an impromptu turn at the very, very end. I think this would have been a little bit more fulfilling. It would have been a better story arc, and they still would have gotten some great marquee matchups out of it. I know there's some plot holes. I know it would have taken some maneuvering, but hey, that's what those guys are paid to do, is to book this shit. So thanks for taking this trip with me. I didn't intend on doing this tonight, and I know I didn't follow my 30-minute rule because it was a different circumstance, but Mr. Positive was off, and I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and he hasn't seen the Andre documentary, so this is kind of fun to do, just to put my thoughts on paper and roll with it. What do you think? Do you think it was possible? Do you think this would have been a better turnout than what we ended up getting, or do you think that what we got was pretty much the best possible scenario? bshowbrian@gmail.com. You can visit us on Twitter at bshowbrian or at That's Positive with no apostrophe. You can follow us on Facebook at bshowbrian and at Mr. Sheldon Positive. I'm also on Instagram. But thanks for joining us. We will see you next time. And again, keep Mr. Positive in your thoughts.